great temples at Halibid and Belur and Somnathpur and other lesser-known temples, but equally fine artistically. Other scholars have studied, for example, the representations of machinery for war, all the trappings of the elephants and the horses, the chariots, the weapons which the soldiers are carrying, the costumes that they wear, their shields, their helmets, the stirrups that are on the horses. All sorts of extraordinary details are there for us to study, and some of these have already been recorded, examined and studied. And we begin to ask, how is it that these artists, in this particular milieu, for these patrons, were particularly concerned to record all these things, which perhaps they weren't in other environments? Again, this is something we don't understand. Why is it that artists working for a Hoysala king in the 12th century in central Karnataka should be concerned to show these things, but an artist working for a king in Tamil Nadu in the 9th century should not? Is something we can only speculate. But there is something to do with the 12th and 13th century. It's very great emphasis on military aspects and on war and on the representations of military aspects. That is, I think, a general feature of Indian art. If we compare the reliefs on the Hoysala temples with those at Konarak, let's say, in the 13th century, we see a similar obsession with showing the paraphernalia of kingship in a military guise, and that the temple is a place where this has to be shown. Because obviously the king, as a military leader, as somebody who commands these forces, is extremely important for the worship of gods.
Above, practically the whole Hindu pantheon is depicted, with an emphasis on the forms of Shiva. Scenes from the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the main episodes of the Bhagavata Purana are also made on the walls. At Halibid are also finely sculpted temples made to the Jaina Tirthankaras. In keeping with Indic traditions, there were no barriers between the patronage of the temples of the different paths towards realization. Many queens and generals of the Hoysalas were Jainas. The Keshava temple at Somnathpur was made in 1268. The Vimana of the temple survives and gives us an idea of how the modest-sized towers of Hoysala times would have looked. Rather than impressive height, the emphasis remains on profuse sculptural decoration. The three shrines of the temple have almost human-sized figures of Vishnu in different forms. As Venugopala, he is seen in his incarnation as Krishna playing the flute. The Hoysala temples mark one of the most exuberant periods of Indian art. The artists of this time must have been among the most assiduous in their detailed work and most prolific in their output. It is the stylization in Indian art which is marked here, with less of the naturalism which was also seen before. While every fingernail is carved, the breath of life which animates much of Indian sculpture has given way to profuse ornamentation. An ornamentation which displays the grandeur of the Hoysala court and empire.